You know that teachers, they're not transing the kids. That's a right-wing crazy conspiracy theory. That's your wild, wacky uncle who watches too much conservative media. He thinks that that's happening. And the non-binary, transgender Texas middle school teachers who are transing the kids in the classroom, they're very upset that you're talking about this.
So the conversation I talked about in my last video is a lot like a lot of the conversations I have about queerness and transness with my kids. Because I work in a conservative area and I'm an out non-binary trans teacher, I have to tread very lightly for fear of losing my job. And so a lot of times I put it in terms of hypotheticals with the kids. I say, oh, some people like to use this. When I talk about my title, mix, I say, oh, it's just a third alternative to Mr., Ms. that some people like to use. I let them kind of draw their own conclusions when it comes back to me, while also keeping it general enough to not bring the heat on myself.
But she doesn't, obviously. She doesn't let them draw their own conclusions. This is what the libs always say. They always say, we don't teach students what to think. We just teach them how to think. But if a teacher instructs her students to address her as mix rather than Mrs. or Miss, you are teaching your student what to think. If you tell your students then, mix, this made-up word referring to a fake concept, you say mix is a third option for people who aren't totally male and aren't totally female, then what you are telling them is there is a third option, that there are people who aren't totally male and aren't totally female, and that's false. That's not true. And this teacher should lose her job. I have nothing against this teacher personally. She seems, I don't know. I was going to say she seems like a nice person. I'm not totally convinced of that. But I love her in as much as I love any other child of God. But people who are this confused about basic tenets of reality not only have no right to teach children, but really we have an obligation to prevent them from teaching our children. If you send your kid to this teacher's classroom, that teacher is going to be taught a lot of lies. That teacher's education is not going to be well served. So the next frontier for conservatives is, how do we prevent these people from teaching? Because I promise you, if that teacher were fired for not understanding basic aspects of reality, which is kind of the first job requirement of a teacher, is you got to understand basic stuff so that you can impart that wisdom to students. But if this teacher were fired, there would be some discrimination lawsuit because of the stupid Bostock decision from the Supreme Court. Thank you, Justice Gorsuch. You have people interpreting civil rights protections on the basis of sex as civil rights protections on the basis of gender identity, which ironically totally undercuts civil rights protections on the basis of sex. And this teacher would probably get a huge payout and probably be able to keep her job. That we need to change that law. We cannot have a serious, sane, flourishing country in which the teachers are that lady. Now, maybe if she changes her mind, comes back to reality, then she can go back into the classroom. But as long as she is calling herself mix, as long as she identifies as trans, pans, thank you, ma'am, she cannot be permitted to teach our kids. Forget about telling the 5-year-olds, or I guess she's a middle school teacher, so telling the 11-year-olds that they ought to go on puberty blockers and cut off their genitals or whatever. Forget that. Just teaching them anything at all. Her worldview is deeply wrong. And so whatever she teaches, if it in any way touches on these delusions that she has, that teaching is going to be wrong. And I know that in our modern culture, we focus on the transgender identifying people as the only victims in the world. And even when they're committing crimes, they're actually the victims. But students have the right to an education. Taxpayers have the right to, as they fund schools that are teaching kids real things. Parents have the right to send their kids to go get a real education. Transgender identifying people do not have any right to the transgender identity because that identity isn't real. It's imaginary. And you don't have a right to things that are false and imaginary and wrong. You obviously don't have a right to things that are wrong. That's why it's called a right. But you're seeing this spread everywhere. There's a new bill in America's Top Hat up in Canada that would, in certain areas, outlaw AntiTransphobia.
Firstly, it enables the Attorney General to create a 2S LGBTQI+ community safety zone to prohibit within 100 meters of the property any homophobic, transphobic act of intimidation, threat, offensive threats, offensive remarks, protest, disturbance, and distribution of hate propaganda within the meaning of the criminal code. It also comes with it a penalty of $25,000 if prosecuted successfully.
So if you're in one of the anti-free speech zones, if you're in one of, forget even anti-free speech, if you're in one of the transgender protection zones, which I'm sure they're going to make the whole country, and you say, women are real and men are not them, you'd be fined $25,000, according to this bill. Coming to a locale near you. What's the direction of our country? We can point, we say, that's crazy what's happening in Canada. That's crazy what's happening in the Netherlands. That's crazy what's happening in Belgium. I think of especially these issues of life and identity and culture. The assisted suicide, the abortion, the transing of everybody. We look at these other countries, we say, wow, we'll never get that far. Well, that's the direction we're going in. How is Joe Biden a worse president than Obama? Is that's the way the wind is blowing from the powerful people. You're seeing it, and you're seeing increasing violence on the streets. I see it because I give these speeches, and I was just in Buffalo, I was just in Purdue. There was an Antifa presence there. Antifa, they're anti-fascists. They're really communists and anarchists. And they show up and they threaten political violence. They threaten terrorism, to attack civilians in the furtherance of a political ideology. And they show up and they scream. They're so unlikable that they've actually made enemies of prominent liberals. There was a video that went around. I just adore this video. It's Michael Rappaport, who is a very radical leftist comedian. And he hates Trump and he hates conservatives and he's a loudmouth about everything. But Michael Rappaport got into a fight with Antifa that became very vulgar very fast.
Nobody's going anywhere. Don't make the mistake, my man. Don't make the mistake. Don't make the mistake. What mistake is that? I don't know where the you think you are. Don't make the mistake.
What mistake is that?
What are you gonna do? Wearing ugly. Why are you wearing a mask?
Get him out of here.
To elaborate on your feelings about the day?
It's fantastic. It's a fantastic day. Yo, you want to walk around the corner?
Rappaport just looking at Antifa looking back.
You want to walk around the corner with me? You want to walk around the corner with me? Do you want to walk around the corner with me? Alright, that's what I thought. That's what I thought. But if not, come walk around the corner with me when there's nobody around. Yeah, I'm trying to get you to come my. I'll come around the corner with you. Wait. And then I'll you in your. To quote the great.
I bring up the clip not only because it's very, very funny to watch two leftists attack each other. I look at it as sort of the Iraq-Iran war. You know, I just want both sides to lose. But to show you the state of political debate in America right now, this is pretty much where we're at. Yeah, you want to walk around the corner? What, so that I can blank your blank? Yeah, so that you can blank my blank, and then I'm going to blank your blank, and then you can fill in the blanks, or probably it's wiser not to fill in the blanks. That's where we're at. That's the level of debate right now. It's not all that much different in the U.S. Congress compared to what this is. We're not exactly living in the 19th century Lincoln-Douglas style debates here. And we are seeing an increase in political violence. I've seen it just myself. I tour all over the country giving speeches. I've done it now for, 6-7 years, and you can see it increasing. Tensions are very, very hot. And the reason it's hot was actually the topic of my speech last night at UNC Greensboro, which is that it's one of the real dangers of transgenderism. The real danger of transgenderism, well, there's a lot of it. One, you're castrating little kids, that's horrible, and you're encouraging pathologies that are associated with suicidality, that's awful. And but the real ultimate problem is that it's divorced from reality. And when you divorce your political actions from reality, everything stops making sense. And it's not just that you'll confine it to this one area, on sexual policy or on bathrooms or on, no, it all stops making sense, because when you contradict reality, what you're saying is the universe is not really intelligible, reason has no place in our political debates, all that matters is my willfulness. If I say that I'm a woman, well, dagnabbit, I am a woman. And you can make all the reasoned arguments you want as to why I can't go into the women's bathroom, but I'm going in. That's my politics. It all breaks down to the point that you have criminals camping out in law enforcement buildings, in the police station, and the police aren't going to do anything about it. Because the law, the reason, the intelligibility of the universe, it all falls apart. And that's where we are. This is the whole conclusion of 1984 by George Orwell. I know it's invoked a lot, but it's invoked a lot for a reason, because it was prophetic. If the party can get you to say that 2 + 2 = 5, and especially if they can get you to believe that 2 + 2 = 5, and our ruling party has gotten a lot of our people to believe that 2 + 2 = 5, then they can do anything at all. And justice be damned. They'll go after their enemies. They'll defend their friends. They will persecute pro-life fathers. They'll let gangsters who maraud all over the country totally off the hook. Now, the rest of the show continues now. We've got the Memoriam Segmentum. This is the most important time of the day when I get to hear from you. And I insisted to Mr. Davies. I said, Mr. Davies, I know we're on the road. I know it's hard, but I want my iPad. And I want to talk to the members of the Chaim de la Chaim Inner Circle. If you're not a member yet, go to dailywire.com/Knowles. Promo code Knowles. Get 2 months free on all annual plans. We'll see you over at the member block.